Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Urshan, and this week we take a look back at what I feel is the greatest vampire film of all time. And I know that's saying a lot because there's been so many great vampire films that have been made. But this one, to me, is the absolute tops, and that is The Horror of Dracula. I got it as part of this series with Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, Taste the Blood of Dracula, and also Dracula A.D. 1972. Which I highly recommend that set. There's also another few great entries in that series, and that's Dracula Prince of Darkness, The Scars of Dracula, as well as this, the final entry in the franchise, and that is The Satanic Rites of Dracula, which features Peter Cushing as well. Playing Dr. Van Helsing, who's also in The Horror of Dracula and also Dracula A.D. 1972 as Professor Van Helsing. Of course, you get Christopher Lee as the great Count Dracula, and what an awesome performance by Christopher Lee. He's just his presence is amazing. He's so tall and he's so well spoken. He's like a perfect gentleman the way he talks, and that's part of the charm of him. That's how he reels in his victims, with that deadly stare and the charming, and he's good looking. That's how he draws them in, and that's that classic vampire, and Dracula represents that more than anybody. And what an amazing film, what an amazing cast of Hammer greats, like Melissa Stribling is beautiful. You get the vampire woman played by Valerie Gaunt. You get Carol Marsh, who plays Lucy Helmwood. And of course Michael Gough, who you might know from the Batman series, the Tim Burton version, where he plays Alfred. And just a great cast, and all at their absolute best, especially Peter Cushing as the great Van Helsing. Awesome cast. It's so well directed. There's amazing images that stick with you forever. It's just so great. It's such a great movie. It's got such a great gothic feel, that great Hammer feel to it. And it's just the best Hammer film, it's the best vampire film, it's the best Dracula movie, whatever. It's just awesome. It's absolutely awesome. I can never get tired of this film. I've seen it so many times. At any rate, let's get to the plot. We first meet Jonathan Harker, which we saw in the Bram Stoker novel, and it's a very faithful adaptation of the Bram Stoker novel. Of course, they do change certain things. So we meet Jonathan Harker as he's been sent to Castle Dracula in Klausenburg, and he's there to serve as Count Dracula's personal librarian. As we first meet Dracula, he's so charming and well-spoken, and he's like, "I'm so honored to have such a distinguished gentleman to serve as my librarian." Apparently Dracula likes to read a lot. He's got thousands of volumes waiting to be indexed. So Dracula's really smart. Apparently he's been reading lots of books, and he knows people, and he's had centuries to do so, so why not? Jonathan Harker, him being sent there is just a ruse, because his real purpose is to end the curse of Dracula once and for all by driving a wooden stake through his heart. And he kind of gets lured by this young vampire woman. That's actually her name in the credits. He doesn't even have a name. But she's played greatly by Valerie Gaunt, who's just beautiful, and she seduces young Jonathan Harker with her beauty and her charm, and she's got that damsel in distress thing going. She's like, "Please help me, you must help me. Please help me, you have no idea the things he makes me do, what horrible things." And he's drawn to her. He's like, "Wow, I need to help this girl, I gotta save her from Dracula." But little does he know she's actually a vampire as well, and she's just trying to trick him and seduce him and take him to the dark side, if you will. And she does just that, but Dracula finds out, and he's not too happy, because I guess he actually wanted him as his victim. And when you first see that dark side of Dracula, it's such a great, awesome shot. It's legendary when you see so classic, and you see the blood dripping because he's just come back from a fresh kill. Love it. I absolutely love that scene, and I love so many scenes in this movie. I never get tired of it. And we also find out that Professor Van Helsing was a colleague of Jonathan Harker, and he's been looking all around for him because he hasn't been around in a while. So he looks all over the town of Klausenburg, and he does track him down to the Castle Dracula, and he finds the coffins with Dracula and the Vampire Bride, and also Jonathan Harker. So we see that Jonathan's fallen prey to the vampire known as Count Dracula. And he does what must be done and drives the wooden stake through the heart of Jonathan Harker, sadly. And he has to break the tragic news to Lucy, who was his fiancée, who's been waiting for him to come back. And she's played by Carol Marsh, who was lovely. And also her brother, Arthur Holmwood, played by great Michael Gough, who you might know from the Batman films by Tim Burton. And so he breaks the news to Arthur, as well as his wife Mina, another beauty by the name of Melissa Stribling. And Arthur isn't quite convinced by this story, this crazy wild story of vampires and garlic and vampire bats and crucifixes and this craziness. And he wonders why Van Helsing knows so much about it. He thinks Van Helsing might have something to do with the death of him. He blames Van Helsing. But once Lucy starts falling prey to Dracula, we see Dracula visit her bedroom at night. She opens the windows up for him. You see the fog come in, and his apparition appears, and Dracula takes another victim, a beautiful young Lucy. And we start seeing Lucy roam around at midnight and in the dark and the fog and the beautiful gothic scenery of that classic Hammer style. I love it. And it's such a great period piece as well. And we see the young girl who falls prey to Lucy as well. I think it's her niece. And she's like, I saw Aunt Lucy in the fog last night. And so Professor Van Helsing and Arthur hear that. They're like, what are you talking about? And Arthur's still not quite convinced until he actually runs into Lucy. And she tries to seduce him as well. Oh, Arthur, I missed you so much. And he sees the horror of the situation. He's like, oh my God, she's still alive. How is this possible? And so she slowly starts getting the picture. And once she starts to grab Arthur there, Van Helsing backs him off and puts the crucifix right in her face, and you see the crucifix burn right into her face, like shh. And you see the black indent on her forehead, and then she runs off into her coffin, and then Van Helsing says, we gotta take care of this. And he's like, but it's so horrible. How can this be? There must be some other way. And he's like, there is no other way. And they drive the stake through her heart, and they take a look at her, and she looks beautiful. Her face starts to look like a beautiful young woman again, who's resting in peace, final peace. And so now Arthur does believe him finally, and now they know what they have to do, and they have to end the world of Count Dracula, go to that castle, and drive that stake through his heart. But it's not going to be that easy, because Dracula's so powerful, and he's immortal, and he's got that power of seduction, and he's also incredibly strong. So he's not going to go down without a fight. And they really have it out. They really have a great final showdown where they're chasing Dracula around, and Dracula grabs Van Helsing by the throat. He's about to kill her, It's a great final scene, but Dracula does finally meet his demise when Van Helsing pulls the curtain back and the sunlight goes on his face and he turns to dust. And that is the end of The Great Horror of Dracula. What an amazing film. I can't say enough about it. I love it. Every shot is great. Every scene is great. It holds you. It grips you in the palm of your hand and keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. So do not miss Horror of Dracula by any means. You must go out and buy it if you haven't already, and go see every Dracula film in the Hammer franchise. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.